I didn't take it. My voice sounded steady, but my hands weren't. Ethan Blake was already pointing at me, his tone sharp enough to cut through the silence. Then explain why you were the last one in his study, Adalyn. Why was he so certain? What exactly did he think he had? And why was there a sealed evidence bag sitting on my grandfather's coffee table like this was already a criminal case? The room felt smaller with every second. My aunt avoided my eyes. Someone whispered. And then Detective Marcus Hale stepped forward, lifting the bag slightly. Before anyone says another word, he said calmly, "We're going to open this. If you're watching this from somewhere outside the U.S., tell me where you are and what time it is for you right now. And if you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, you'll understand why I didn't say another word. Just stay with me." A week before my grandfather died, I was standing in his study holding that watch in my hand. It was heavier than I expected, not just in weight, but in meaning. The kind of piece that didn't belong in a drawer or a display case, it belonged to a story. Grandpa Arthur sat in his leather chair watching me with that quiet, knowing expression he always had when he thought I was missing something. "You see the engraving?" he asked. I tilted the watch toward the light. The initials were faint but precise, carved decades ago. A date sat beneath them, older than I expected. "I thought this was just a family heirloom," I said. He smiled, but it wasn't the warm kind. That's what people think when they don't ask the right questions. That should have been my first warning. I worked in forensic accounting. My job was to follow patterns, identify inconsistencies, and ask uncomfortable questions. But with family, I had a blind spot. I wanted things to be simple. I wanted people to be who they said they were. Grandpa leaned forward slightly. "Adalyn, this watch doesn't just measure time. It marks decisions. And some of those decisions come back." I frowned. "You're talking like there's paperwork attached to it." "There is," he said. "In the safe." That caught my attention. I stepped over to the wall panel behind his bookshelf. He nodded once, giving me permission. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, alongside a few documents and a velvet case, sat a thin folder. I didn't open it. "Not yet." "Is this part of the will?" I asked. "Not exactly," he said. "It's protection." Before I could press further, the door behind me opened. "Ethan." He didn't knock. He never did. "Didn't realize we were doing private tours," he said, leaning against the frame like he owned the place. I stepped aside, instinctively closing the safe. Grandpa's tone changed instantly. "Ethan, you're early." Ethan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just wanted to check in. Make sure everything's in order." Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. "In order," I repeated. He shrugged, walking deeper into the room. "You know how things get when people start talking about inheritance. Everyone suddenly remembers what they deserve." I didn't like that word. Deserve. Grandpa didn't respond right away. He just watched Ethan carefully, like he was measuring him. "I'm still here," he said finally. "Nothing is being distributed today." Ethan laughed softly. "Of course. But it doesn't hurt to be prepared." There it was again. That underlying tension, like he wasn't just talking about the future, he was planning around it. I moved toward the desk, setting the watch down gently. "You've been coming by a lot lately," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Ethan didn't look at me. His attention had shifted to the bookshelf. "Family should show up right." "Sure," I said. "Just interesting timing." That got his attention. He turned, studying me for a second longer than necessary. "You always did like reading into things. And you always did like avoiding direct answers." Grandpa cleared his throat. "That's enough." Silence settled in, but it wasn't comfortable. Ethan walked over to the desk and picked up the watch. He turned it over in his hand slower than necessary, like he was memorizing it. "Beautiful piece," he said. "Probably worth more than people think." "It's not for sale," Grandpa replied. Ethan nodded. "Didn't say it was." But he didn't put it down right away. That was the second warning. Eventually, he set it back and moved casually toward the bookshelf again. Too casually. I was watching him now. He pretended to scan the titles, then shifted slightly just enough to angle himself toward the safe. And then, almost like it was instinct, his phone appeared in his hand. A quick movement, a subtle click. If I hadn't been paying attention, I would have missed it. "Did you just take a picture?" I asked. Ethan didn't flinch. "Of a book cover? Relax." "There's nothing on that shelf worth photographing," I said. He smirked. "You'd be surprised what people find valuable." Grandpa's voice came in sharper this time. "Ethan, that was enough." He slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Just curious," he said lightly. "Didn't mean to step on any toes." But the room had already shifted. Whatever this was, it wasn't curiosity. A few minutes later, I left the study. I told myself I was overthinking it. That grief was making everyone act a little off. That Ethan was just being Ethan. But as I walked down the hallway, something didn't sit right. I paused halfway to the front door, turned back, and went straight to the small security panel mounted near the kitchen. Grandpa had installed cameras a year ago after a break-in down the street. Nothing complicated, just enough to monitor entrances and key rooms, including the study. I logged in quickly, scrolling back through the footage. The angle wasn't perfect, but it was enough. There I was, standing by the safe. Then Ethan entering. Then I froze. He wasn't just looking around. At one point, while Grandpa's back was turned, Ethan stepped closer to the safe. Not opening it, but positioning himself right in front of it. And then he pulled out his phone again. This time there was no doubt. He was taking pictures, not of the shelf, of the safe, of what was inside. My chest tightened. Why would he need that? I scrubbed through the footage again, slower this time. There was something else. A slight flicker. A jump in the timestamp. Just a second, but enough to feel wrong. I leaned closer to the screen. "That's not right," I murmured. Because in my line of work, time discrepancies weren't accidents. They were edits. And if someone had already started manipulating footage inside my grandfather's house, then this wasn't about a watch anymore. The day of the funeral felt quieter than it should have. Not peaceful, not respectful, just restrained. Like everyone was holding something back. I noticed it the moment I walked into the church. People weren't just grieving Grandpa Arthur. They were watching each other. Ethan stood near the front speaking softly with Aunt Rebecca. He had that same composed expression he'd worn in the study days earlier, calm, controlled, almost rehearsed. When he saw me, he gave a small nod. Not warm, not distant, just measured. That was new. I took a seat a few rows back. I didn't want to be near him. Not yet. Not after what I'd seen on the security footage. The timestamp glitch hadn't left my mind. I'd replayed it over and over the night before. A 1-second jump. Clean. Intentional. Not a system error. An edit. And now watching Ethan stand there like nothing had happened, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was a pattern. The service itself passed in fragments. Words about legacy, about family, about values. I listened, but not really. Because every time someone said trust or honor, my mind went back to that moment in the study, Ethan's phone, the angle, the quiet click. After the service, everyone moved to the reception hall next door. That's where things started to feel off. People grouped up quickly. Conversations dropped when others approached. Eyes lingered too long. I poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink. "Rough day," a voice said behind me. I turned. "Ethan." "Of course." "Yeah," I replied. "It is." He leaned casually against the table beside me. "He always liked you, you know." I didn't respond right away. "He liked all of us." Ethan smiled slightly. Not the same way. There it was again. That implication. "What are you trying to say?" I asked. Nothing, he said quickly. Too quickly. Just, people notice things. Who gets invited into private conversations? Who gets access? My grip tightened slightly on the glass. "Access to what?" He shrugged. "Important things." I held his gaze. "If you have something to say, just say it." He studied me for a moment, then leaned in just enough that no one else could hear. Things have a way of coming out, he said quietly, especially when people think no one's paying attention. My stomach dropped. Was he talking about the footage? Did he know I'd seen it? Or worse, was he setting something up? Before I could respond, Aunt Rebecca approached, her expression tight. Ethan, she said Mr. Carter is here. That got my attention. Mr. Douglas Carter, the family attorney. Ethan straightened immediately. Already. He said it couldn't wait, she replied. That wasn't normal. Legal matters didn't usually show up in the middle of a funeral reception. We all turned as Mr. Carter entered the room. He looked composed, but there was a seriousness in his posture that cut through the quiet conversations around us. Thank you all for staying, he said. I won't take much of your time. People gathered closer, instinctively, waiting, watching. He clasped his hands in front of him. As you know, Arthur Murray left behind a will that will be formally read in a few days. However, there is a matter that requires immediate attention. The room shifted. I felt it, that same tightening in the air. What kind of matter? Someone asked. Mr. Carter hesitated for half a second. A personal item of Mr. Murray's has been reported missing. There it was. I didn't look at Ethan. I didn't have to, because I could feel his attention lock onto me. The item in question, Mr. Carter continued, is a vintage wristwatch of both financial and legal significance. Legal. My pulse picked up. So Grandpa hadn't been exaggerating. This watch, Mr. Carter added, was not merely a keepsake. It is connected to documentation that may affect aspects of the estate. A murmur moved through the room. Questions, confusion, concern. And then Ethan stepped forward. Of course he did. I think we should be honest here, he said, his voice carrying just enough to command attention. This isn't just about something going missing. No one interrupted him. He looked around the room slowly, deliberately. This is about trust, he continued, and whether that trust has been broken. My heart was pounding now, not from fear, from clarity, because this wasn't spontaneous. This was structured. Every word, every pause, planned. Ethan, Aunt Rebecca said quietly, maybe this isn't the time. No, he cut in gently. It is. Then he turned. And this time, he didn't hesitate. His eyes met mine, direct, unwavering. And I think he said we all deserved to know who had access to that watch before it disappeared. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Every face turned toward me. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Because now I understood exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just accusing me. He was building a narrative. And the worst part, it was starting to work. Mr. Carter stepped in carefully. Let's not jump to conclusions. I'm not, Ethan said smoothly. I'm asking a question. He took a slow breath, then said it, clear enough for everyone to hear. I think Adalyn knows more about this than she's saying. The room didn't react all at once. It shifted, like a current turning. And for the first time that day, I saw doubt in their eyes. Not anger, not yet, just doubt. And that was more dangerous. Because doubt spreads quietly, and once it settles in, it doesn't need proof to grow. I didn't respond right away, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew exactly how this would play out if I reacted too quickly. Ethan was watching me, not with anger, not even with triumph, with expectation. He wanted me to defend myself emotionally, to sound defensive, to give the room something to latch onto. I set my glass down slowly. Then ask your question, I said. My voice was calm, steady, controlled. That threw him off. Just a little. He hadn't expected that. Ethan tilted his head slightly. You were in Grandpa's study last week. Alone. I visited him, I said. Like I've done for years. You opened the safe. A murmur moved through the room. I didn't break eye contact. With his permission. Ethan let out a small breath like he'd been waiting for that answer. And the watch, he pressed. You handled it. Yes. More whispers now. Aunt Rebecca stepped forward, her voice tight with concern but laced with something sharper underneath. Adalyn, why wouldn't you tell anyone that earlier? I turned to her. Because no one asked me. That's not the point, she said quickly. The point is transparency. This is family. Family. That word again. Used like leverage. I nodded once. Exactly. Which is why I didn't think I needed to announce every conversation I had with my grandfather. Ethan stepped in before she could respond. It's not about conversations. It's about timing. There it is, I said quietly. He smiled faintly. You were one of the last people to see that watch before it disappeared. And you were there too, I replied. That landed. A few heads turned. Ethan didn't flinch. I didn't open the safe. You stood right in front of it, I said. And you took photos. Now the room shifted again. Not toward me. Toward him. Aunt Rebecca frowned. Ethan. He exhaled slowly like he was disappointed I'd gone there. Of a bookshelf? That's not what the footage shows. The words came out before I could stop them. Silence. Sharp this time. Ethan's eyes narrowed just slightly. What footage? I held his gaze. For a second, I considered backing off, letting this play out slower, but he had already forced the confrontation, so I stepped forward. The security system in Grandpa's house, I said. It records the study. Mr. Carter looked up immediately. There are cameras in that room. Yes, I said. Installed last year. I didn't take my eyes off Ethan, and I reviewed them. That changed everything, because now it wasn't just his word against mine. Now there was a third layer. Evidence. Ethan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Okay, that's new. It's accurate, I replied. Then show it, he said. Just like that. Confident. Too confident. I felt it again, that same instinct from the night before. Something wasn't right. Because if he had gone through the trouble of taking photos, if there was a timestamp glitch, then he already knew about the cameras, which meant he wasn't afraid of them. Aunt Rebecca crossed her arms. Adalyn, if you have footage, this would be the time. I will, I said. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Will or can't. There it was. The pressure. The push. He wanted this resolved now. In front of everyone. On his terms. I shook my head slightly. Not like this. Why not, he asked. Because I don't trust the version of events you're trying to create. That hit harder than anything else I'd said. For a moment, his expression tightened. Just a fraction. But I saw it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Careful, Adalyn. That sounds like deflection. No, I said. It sounds like patience. Mr. Carter stepped in again, clearly trying to regain control. This is getting unproductive. We should allow the proper authorities to handle. I already did, Ethan said. Every head turned. What someone asked. Ethan straightened his tone, shifting more formal now. I filed a report this morning, he said. Missing property. Potential theft. The words landed like a weight. A real one, not just family tension. Legal. Aunt Rebecca looked at him surprised. You didn't tell me that. I didn't want to escalate things, he said. But if we're being honest, we're already there. I felt my pulse in my throat. Not fear. Focus. Because now I understood the timeline, the accusation, the confidence, the evidence he kept referencing without showing. This wasn't reaction. This was a sequence. He had moved first, and he expected me to scramble. Instead, I took a breath, slow, measured, and said the only thing that made sense. Good. The word caught him off guard. Good, he repeated. Yes, I said, because if this is official, then we won't have to rely on assumptions. I let that sit for a second, then added calmly, we'll rely on facts. The room was completely still now. No whispers, no shifting, just waiting for the next move. And right on cue, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not aggressive, but precise. Everyone turned. A man stepped inside holding a badge at his waist. Detective Marcus Hale. He looked around the room once, taking everything in. Then his eyes landed on Ethan. Mr. Blake, he said you reported a missing item. Ethan nodded. Yes. The detective gave a small, acknowledging nod. Then his gaze shifted. To me. Ms. Murray, he said, I'd like to ask you a few questions. And just like that, this wasn't a family argument anymore. It was an investigation. The police station smelled like coffee that had been sitting too long. I sat across from Detective Marcus Hale, hands folded in my lap, posture straight. Not defensive, not relaxed, just deliberate. This wasn't unfamiliar territory for me. I'd spent years in rooms like this on the other side of the table, reviewing financial fraud cases, walking investigators through timelines, translating messy human behavior into something structured and provable. But this time, I wasn't the expert. I was the variable. "Let's keep this simple," Detective Hale said, clicking his pen once. "You're not under arrest. This is just a conversation." I nodded. "I understand." He studied me for a moment longer than necessary. Not aggressively, just carefully. "You work in forensic accounting," he said. "Yes. So you know how these things go." "I do." That seemed to settle something for him. "Then you also know," he continued, "that I'm not interested in assumptions, just timelines." "Same here," I said. A flicker of something approval maybe passed through his expression. "Walk me through your visit last week," he said. "The one where you were in your grandfather's study." "I didn't rush it. I arrived around 3:30 p.m., I said. We talked for about 20 minutes. He asked me to open the safe. "Why you?" He trusted me with documents before. I help him review financial statements occasionally. "Did you remove anything from the safe?" "No." "Did you handle the watch?" "Yes." "Why?" I exhaled slowly. He asked me to look at it, the engraving. Detective Hale made a note. "And after that?" Ethan came in, unannounced. Hale looked up. "What happened next?" I described it clearly. No embellishments, no emotion. Ethan's tone, his interest in the safe, the way he held the watch, the moment he pulled out his phone. I didn't mention the footage yet, not until it mattered. "Did you see him take anything?" Hale asked. "No." "Did you see him open the safe?" "No." He leaned back slightly, tapping the pen against his notebook. "All right," he said. "Let's talk about what we do have." He slid a printed still image across the table. Security footage. Grainy, slightly angled. Me, standing near the safe. I didn't react. "This is from the system installed in the house," he said. "Timestamp puts you in the room shortly before the watch was last confirmed to be there." "That's accurate," I said. He slid another image forward. A close-up. My hand. On the velvet case. "And your prints were found here," he added. "Also accurate." He paused, waiting for hesitation, for contradiction, for something he could press on. He didn't get it. "Is there anything about that you'd like to clarify?" he asked. "Yes," I said. That caught his attention. The timestamp, I continued. "It's been altered." Silence. Not dramatic. Just focused. Hale didn't interrupt. "Explain that," he said. "There's a 1-second discrepancy between frames," I said. A jump. Clean cut. Not consistent with system lag. "You're sure?" "Yes." "You reviewed the footage yourself?" "Yes." He leaned forward slightly now. "Why?" "Because I knew how this would look," I said. "And I wanted to confirm whether what I saw matched what actually happened." "And does it?" "No." That hung in the air for a second. "All right," Hale said slowly. "Let's say the timestamp is off. That doesn't change the fact that you were in the room, that your prints are on the case. I'm not denying either of those things I said. I'm telling you they're being used out of context." He watched me carefully. "Then give me the context." I met his gaze. "Someone accessed the system," I said, "remotely." He didn't move. But something shifted. "You're suggesting the footage was edited," he said. "I'm stating that it was." "And you have proof?" "Not yet," I said. "But I know where to look." That was the first moment I saw him reassess me. Not as a suspect. As a source. "All right," he said. "Then let me tell you what else we have." He reached for another folder. Inside were call logs, access reports, a partial system audit. "We pulled basic system activity," he said. "There was a remote login the night before the funeral." My chest tightened. From where I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid the page across the table. "An IP address, a device ID, registered to a personal laptop." I stared at it for half a second longer than I should have, because I recognized it. "Do you know this device?" Hale asked. I looked up, kept my voice even. "Yes." "Whose is it?" I held his gaze. Didn't rush the answer. Didn't soften it. "Ethan Blake's." Hale didn't react immediately. He just watched me, measuring, comparing, rebuilding the narrative in real time. That's a serious claim, he said. I'm aware. You're also aware, he continued, that making false accusations in an active investigation doesn't help your position. I'm not making an accusation, I said. I'm pointing to data. He studied me for a long second, then nodded once. All right, he said. Then we follow the data. That was the shift. Subtle, but real. I wasn't being cornered anymore. The line had moved. And for the first time since Ethan said my name in that room, I wasn't reacting. I was building. Hale closed the folder. There's something else, he added. I waited. We obtained a warrant this morning, he said, based on the report filed, for what I asked, to search Mr. Blake's residence. A quiet pulse of tension moved through me. Not relief. Not yet. Because warrants didn't guarantee anything. They just opened doors. Did you find anything, I asked? Hale held my gaze, just long enough to make the answer matter. We found something, he said. He reached into a separate evidence envelope. Didn't open it. Just rested his hand on it. And before we move forward, he added, I think it's best this is presented in front of everyone. My stomach tightened slightly. Why, I asked. Because he said calmly, if what's inside this connects the way I think it does. He paused, then finished. It changes who this investigation is really about. I didn't go home right away after leaving the station. I sat in my car for a full 10 minutes, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel, replaying every word Detective Hale had said. We found something. Not what. Not how. Just enough to shift the weight of the room. I'd seen that tactic before, hold the centerpiece back until it matters most. Not to manipulate, but to control timing. To let the truth land where it couldn't be redirected. Ethan had tried to control the narrative. Now someone else was doing the same. I started the engine and drove straight to Jordan's place. If I was right about the footage and I was then, whatever Hale found would only confirm part of the story. I needed the rest. Jordan opened the door before I even knocked. You look like you didn't sleep, he said. I didn't, I replied, walking past him. I need your help. He didn't ask questions right away. That's why I trusted him. His apartment smelled like takeout and overheated electronics. 3 monitors lit up his desk, lines of code frozen mid-scroll. Tell me everything, he said, already pulling up a chair. I walked him through it. The study, the safe, Ethan's behavior, the footage, the timestamp jump, the IP address. He didn't interrupt until I finished. Then he leaned back, exhaled slowly. Okay, he said. If someone edited the footage, they didn't do it locally. That system logs everything. That's what I'm counting on. He nodded. Do you have access? I can log in, I said. But I don't know how deep the logs go. Jordan cracked his knuckles once and turned back to the keyboard. Let's find out. I stood behind him as he worked, watching the system unfold layer by layer. Login history. Access attempts. Device fingerprints. Here, he said after a minute. This is what you saw. He pointed to the timestamp. A 1-second skip. Clean, precise. That's not a glitch, he confirmed. That's an edit. I know. He scrolled further. And this, he added, is the remote access. A login from the night before the funeral. Same IP Detective Hale had shown me. Same device ID. Jordan pulled up the device profile. Registered to... He paused. Ethan Blake, I finished. Yeah, he said quietly. That's not subtle. No, I said. It's not. But something about it bothered me. Ethan wasn't careless. Everything he'd done so far had been calculated, structured, controlled. So why leave a direct link like that? Jordan must have seen it on my face. You're thinking it's too obvious, he said. Yes. Could be arrogance, he offered. Or a layer, I replied. He raised an eyebrow. Meaning he wanted someone to find it, but not right away. Jordan turned back to the screen. Then we go deeper. He pulled up the edit log. Not just access, but actions taken within the system. File modifications. Clip trimming. Export activity. Here we go, he said. A sequence of edits. Short clips removed. Frames adjusted. Timestamp rewritten. All within a narrow window. All from the same device, Jordan added. Not necessarily, I said. He glanced back at me. If someone accessed his laptop remotely, I continued or used his credentials. It still points to him publicly, even if he wasn't the one physically doing it. Jordan nodded slowly. So either he did it himself, or he set it up to look like he did. Or, I said, he assumed no one would look this closely. That was the problem with people who plan just far enough ahead. They forgot about people who lived in the details. Jordan leaned forward again. There's more. He pulled up a secondary log. This system pings external storage when files are exported, he explained. Look at this. A device connection. Not the same laptop. Different ID. Different timestamp. My chest tightened. What is that? I asked. External drive, he said, plugged in briefly during the edit window. Whose? He shook his head. No registration. Just a generic ID. I stared at the screen. Can you track it? Not directly, he said. But we can see what was transferred. He opened the export log. One file. A video segment. The one with me in the study. Edited. Saved. Copied. So someone took the edited version, I said. And kept it, Jordan confirmed. For what? He didn't answer. He didn't have to, because I already knew. To use it. At the right time. In the right way. Like Ethan had done at the reception, referencing evidence without showing it. Letting people imagine the worst. I exhaled slowly. This was never about the watch, I said. Jordan glanced at me. Then what is it about? Control, I replied. Of the story, of the estate, of how people see him. Jordan nodded once. Then whatever Hale found. It's just the physical piece. Yes, I said. And this, I gestured to the screen, is the structure behind it. He leaned back, stretching slightly. So what's the plan? I didn't answer right away, because for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't defending. I was choosing. They're all meeting again, I said finally. At the house. When? Soon, I replied. Hale wants to present what they found in front of everyone. Jordan smirked slightly. Public reveal. Bold. Necessary, I said. Ethan built this in front of them. It needs to come apart the same way. He turned his chair toward me. You going to show them this too? I shook my head. Not yet. Why not? Because right now, I said, this is leverage. Jordan raised an eyebrow. That's a strong word. It's an accurate one, I replied. I looked back at the screen one more time. The logs, the edits, the fingerprints of a plan that had almost worked. Almost. Ethan thinks he controlled the timing, I said quietly. He thinks he decided when the truth shows up. Jordan followed my gaze. And you're going to take that away from him. Yes, I said. Not with anger, not with revenge, just precision. Because when the truth finally comes out, it won't be rushed, it won't be messy, and it won't be something he can talk his way out of. It will be complete, and it will land exactly where it needs to. Mr. Carter's office was quieter than I expected. Not the comfortable kind of quiet. The kind that forces you to hear your own thoughts more clearly than you want to. I sat across from him, a folder in front of me untouched. Detective Hale stood near the window, arms crossed, looking out at the parking lot like he was giving us space, but he was listening to everything. Start from the beginning, Mr. Carter said. Not impatient, not skeptical, just careful. So I did. I walked them through the timeline. My visit, Ethan's behavior, the watch, the safe, the footage, the timestamp discrepancy. Then I slid the printed logs across the desk. Jordan had formatted them cleanly, timestamps, device IDs, access points. Nothing dramatic, just data. Mr. Carter adjusted his glasses and leaned in. He didn't rush. That was something I respected. People who understood documents knew better than to skim. This is the remote login, he asked. Yes. And this device is registered to Ethan Blake. Yes. Detective Hale finally turned from the window. That matches what we pulled, he said. Mr. Carter tapped the page lightly. And you're saying the footage was altered during this session? I'm not saying it, I replied. The logs are, he gave a small nod, then flipped to the next page. The edit sequence, he murmured. Clipping timestamp adjustment. He paused. And export. Yes. To an external device, he added. I didn't answer right away, because that part still mattered. That's correct, I said. Mr. Carter leaned back, slightly steepling his fingers. This changes things, he said. Detective Hale didn't disagree. But it's not complete, Hale added. We still need a direct connection between the edit and the missing item. I know, I said, and he continued, we need to be careful about how this is presented. That part was for me. I met his gaze. You're planning to bring everyone together. Yes. Good. Mr. Carter looked between us. This won't be a courtroom. It's a family setting. Emotions will be involved. I'm aware, I said. Then you also understand, he added, that how this is introduced will determine how it's received. He wasn't talking about facts. He was talking about timing, about control. I nodded once. That's why I haven't shared everything yet. Detective Hale studied me. Everything. I held his gaze. There's one more layer, I said. That got both of their attention. The external device, I continued. The one used to export the edited footage. Hale stepped closer. What about it? We can't trace the device itself, I said, but we can trace what was done with the file. Mr. Carter leaned forward again. Explain. The edited clip wasn't just stored, I said. It was prepared. For what he asked. To be shown, I replied. At the right moment. In the right context. Hale's expression tightened slightly. You think he planned to present it, he said. Yes, I said. Not to the police. To the family. To control the narrative, Mr. Carter added quietly. Yes. Silence settled over the room. Not confusion. Understanding. Detective Hale exhaled slowly. That aligns with what we've seen so far. Mr. Carter nodded once. Then the question becomes, what did we find that completes this? All eyes shifted to Hale. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed evidence bag. The same one, clear plastic, marked, untouched since the station. He placed it on the desk between us. Even without opening it, the shape inside was recognizable. My chest tightened slightly. The watch. But there was something else in there. Flat, folded. Paper. Hale rested his hand on the bag, not opening it yet. This was recovered from Mr. Blake's residence, he said. Mr. Carter's gaze sharpened. Where exactly? Inside a locked drawer, Hale replied. In his home office. Alone, I asked. Hale shook his head once. No. That one word shifted everything. What else was there, Mr. Carter asked? Hale looked at me. Not at the lawyer. At me. Copies, he said, of what I asked. Estate documents, he replied. Drafts, markups. My pulse slowed, not sped up, because this was the part Grandpa had hinted at. Altered, Mr. Carter asked. Yes. Silence again. But this time it was heavier, because now it wasn't just about a missing watch. It was about intent. Let me get this straight, Mr. Carter said carefully. You're saying Mr. Blake had possession of the watch? And documentation suggesting he was attempting to modify aspects of the estate. Hale didn't soften it. Yes. Mr. Carter leaned back, exhaling slowly. That's significant. That's motive, Hale added. I didn't speak. I didn't need to, because for the first time since this started, the structure was complete. The footage, the edits, the narrative, and now the physical evidence. But there was still one decision left. How do you want to proceed? Hale asked, looking at me. Not as a suspect. As someone involved. I glanced at the evidence bag, then at the documents in front of us, then back at him. We do it the way he started it, I said. Mr. Carter raised an eyebrow, meaning, in front of everyone, I replied. At the house. Hale nodded slowly. And you're ready for that. I thought about the room. The looks. The doubt. The way Ethan had said my name like it was already decided. Yes, I said. Not because I wanted confrontation, but because I understood something now that I hadn't before. Truth doesn't just matter. Timing does. And this time, the timing wouldn't be his. Hale picked up the evidence bag. Then let's finish it, he said. The house felt different the second time. Not quieter, not heavier, sharper. Like everyone had already chosen a side, but no one wanted to say it out loud yet. I stepped inside and immediately felt the shift. Conversation slowed. Eyes turned. Some people looked relieved to see me. Others, not so much. Ethan stood near the fireplace, exactly where he had been the last time. Same posture, same controlled expression. But this time, there was something underneath it. Tension? Good. Detective Hale walked in behind me, carrying the sealed evidence bag. Mr. Carter followed, holding a slim folder under his arm. That was all it took. The room settled. No announcements, no instructions, just anticipation. Aunt Rebecca was the first to speak. "What is this?" she asked, her voice tight. Hale didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "We're here to clarify what happened to Mr. Murray's missing property," he said. Ethan nodded slightly, like he'd been expecting this. "Good," he said, "because this has gone on long enough." I almost smiled. He still thought he was in control. Hale stepped toward the center table, the same one from before, and placed the evidence bag down carefully. No one moved closer, but everyone leaned in. This item, Hale said, resting his hand lightly on the bag, was recovered earlier today. A beat of silence. Then Ethan spoke. "Where?" he asked. "At your residence," Hale replied. It was subtle, but I saw it. The flicker. Gone in less than a second, but it was there. Ethan recovered quickly, letting out a quiet breath. "That's not possible." "It is," Hale said calmly. Aunt Rebecca turned to her son. "Ethan?" He shook his head immediately. "No. This doesn't make sense." He looked at Hale, then at the bag, then at me, like he was recalculating. Good. Hale didn't rush. He let the moment stretch just enough. Then he spoke again. "We also recovered additional materials from the same location." Mr. Carter stepped forward slightly, opening the folder in his hands. "Documents," he said, "related to the estate." Now the room reacted. Not loudly, but enough. "What kind of documents?" someone asked. "Drafts," Mr. Carter replied. "Marked versions, with revisions." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That doesn't mean anything," he said quickly. "I was reviewing things, trying to understand." "You don't revise legal documents you're not authorized to control," Mr. Carter said evenly. That landed. Harder than anything so far. Ethan didn't answer right away, because there wasn't a clean answer. Hale glanced at me once, just enough to signal it. This was the moment. The one Ethan had tried to create. The one he thought he owned. I stepped forward. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough. "You told everyone I had access," I said, my voice steady, "that I was the last one in that room." Ethan didn't respond. "Not yet. You said you had proof," I continued. "I do," he said quickly. The footage was edited. That cut through everything." A few people turned immediately. Others just froze. Ethan let out a short laugh. "No, it wasn't." "Yes," I said. "It was." I looked at the table, then back at him. "Remotely accessed," I added. Timestamp adjusted. Clip exported. His expression shifted. "Not fully, but enough." "That's not," he started. "It came from your device," I said. Silence. Real silence this time. No whispers. No movement. Just impact. Ethan shook his head slowly. "That's a stretch." "It's data," I replied. "You're making assumptions." "I'm following logs." He looked around the room now, searching for support. But it wasn't there. Not the way it had been before. Because now, there were details. Structure. Pieces that connected. Aunt Rebecca stepped closer to him. "Ethan, what is she talking about?" He didn't answer her. He kept his eyes on me. "Even if that were true," he said, forcing calm into his voice, "it doesn't explain the watch." He gestured toward the bag, which is what this is actually about. He was trying to pull it back, to simplify, to isolate the one piece he thought he could still control. Hale didn't interrupt. He let Ethan finish. Then, slowly, he unsealed the evidence bag. The sound was quiet, but it echoed. He reached inside and removed the watch first, placed it gently on the table. Gasps this time. Soft but real. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, because the visual alone was enough. But Hale wasn't done. He reached back into the bag and pulled out the second item, folded, worn at the edges. A document. He handed it directly to Mr. Carter. "Read it," he said. Mr. Carter adjusted his glasses, unfolding the paper carefully. His eyes moved across the page once, then again, slower. And that's when I saw it. The shift. Recognition. Understanding. He looked up. Not at me. At Ethan. "This is a modified transfer clause," he said. No one spoke. This document attempts to redirect a portion of the estate. He continued by altering the conditions tied to the watch. A murmur broke through the room. Confusion, shock, realization. Ethan stepped forward, now his voice tighter. That's not finalized. It's not valid, Mr. Carter cut in, but it is intentional. That word settled in. Intentional. Not a mistake. Not confusion. A plan. Ethan looked around again. But this time, there was nowhere for it to land. No support. No doubt to lean on. Just clarity. And for the first time since this started, he didn't have the room anymore. For a moment, no one spoke. Not because they didn't understand, but because they did. Ethan stood there just a few feet from the table, the watch and the document sitting between all of us like something final, not just evidence conclusion. This doesn't prove anything, he said finally. But the confidence was gone. Not completely, but enough. Detective Hale didn't respond right away. He stepped closer to the table, pulling on a pair of gloves with practiced ease. Then he turned the watch over carefully. We processed this earlier, he said. Standard procedure. He didn't look at Ethan. He didn't need to. Multiple prints were recovered, he continued. Some expected, some not. Aunt Rebecca's voice came out softer than before. What does that mean? Hale glanced at her briefly. It means we can place who handled the item and when. Ethan shook his head. That doesn't. Hale lifted a second sheet from his folder and placed it beside the watch. Your prints are on both the outer casing and the inner latch, he said calmly. Recent contact. That landed harder than anything else, because this wasn't interpretation. It was physical. Ethan exhaled sharply. Of course my prints are on it. I've handled it before. We all have. Not like this, Hale said. Silence again. Mr. Carter stepped forward, his tone measured but firm. Ethan, the document. Ethan didn't look at him. This isn't finalized, he repeated. It's just a draft. A draft you kept hidden in a locked drawer, Mr. Carter replied, alongside a missing asset tied directly to its conditions. Ethan's jaw tightened. That doesn't mean I stole anything. I watched him carefully, not for what he said, for how he said it, because the words were defensive. But the structure underneath them was shifting. You didn't just take the watch, I said quietly. He looked at me then. Really looked. Like he was trying to figure out how much I knew. You needed it. I continued to support the narrative in that document. That's speculation, he shot back. No, I said. It's alignment. I stepped closer, not aggressively, just enough to stand on the same side of the table. You created a version of events where I had access, I said. You edited footage to reinforce it. You held onto that clip waiting for the right moment to use it. Ethan opened his mouth to interrupt. I didn't let him. And then you introduced the accusation publicly, I added. Before anyone saw real evidence. Before anyone asked questions. The room was completely still now, because this part they remembered. They had seen it happen. You wanted control, I said, not just of the watch, of how people understood what was happening. Ethan shook his head slowly. You're twisting this. Then explain it, I said. He didn't answer. Not right away, because there wasn't a clean explanation, only fragments. And fragments don't hold up when everything else is structured. Detective Hale stepped in, his tone calm but final. Mr. Blake, he said you reported a theft, provided preliminary statements, and failed to disclose possession of the item in question. Ethan's eyes flicked toward him. I didn't. You also accessed and modified a private security system, Hale continued, without authorization. That's not. And retained altered footage, Hale finished, which you referenced in a public setting. The words stacked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. Ethan exhaled slower this time, like he was buying time or losing it. Aunt Rebecca stepped forward, her voice unsteady. Ethan, tell me this isn't what it looks like. That was the moment, not the evidence, not the accusation. That, because now, it wasn't about control. It was about consequence. Ethan looked at her, then at the table, then at me. And for the first time since this started, he didn't try to redirect, didn't try to reframe. He just hesitated. I didn't think it would go this far, he said. The room reacted not loudly but sharply, because that wasn't a denial. It was something else. What does that mean? Aunt Rebecca asked. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping. I was trying to protect what should have been mine, he said. Mr. Carter's expression hardened. That's not how estates work. You don't understand, Ethan said, frustration breaking through now. He was going to leave everything scattered, complicated. I was just simplifying it. By rewriting it, I asked. He looked at me. By fixing it. That's not fixing, I said. That's taking. Silence again. He didn't argue this time, because he couldn't. Detective Hale stepped closer. At this point, he said, we're no longer discussing a misunderstanding. Ethan didn't respond. Failure to disclose recovered property, unauthorized system access, and attempted manipulation of estate-related documents. Stop, Ethan said quietly. Hale didn't. All carry legal implications. I said stop, Ethan repeated. But it wasn't forceful. It was tired. Like the structure he had built was finally collapsing under its own weight. Aunt Rebecca stepped back slightly, her expression changing, not just confusion now. Distance. Real distance. And that, more than anything, was the shift. Because Ethan hadn't just lost control of the story, he had lost the room. 3 weeks later, everything was quiet again. Not the tense kind of quiet from before, a real one. The kind that comes after something breaks and nothing is pretending to hold it together anymore. I sat across from Mr. Carter in his office, the same chair, the same desk, but it felt different now. Final. The official review is complete, he said, sliding a document toward me. I didn't reach for it right away. Ethan, I asked. Mr. Carter exhaled lightly. He's cooperating. His attorney negotiated a resolution charges related to unauthorized access and interference with estate proceedings. The theft allegation was withdrawn once the item was recovered and circumstances were clarified. So not prison, not dramatic, but not clean either. Consequences that follow you quietly, that felt appropriate. And the estate, I asked. He nodded once. Unchanged. As your grandfather intended. That mattered more than anything else. I picked up the document, then scanning the key points. Clear. Structured. Protected. Grandpa had known. Not the exact details, but the possibility. He left a conditional clause tied to that watch, Mr. Carter added. It requires independent verification of any claim involving physical possession before any related transfer can be recognized. I looked up. So even if Ethan had succeeded, it wouldn't have held, he said. I let out a slow breath. That sounded like him. Careful, precise, quietly protective. Why didn't he just make it simpler, I asked. Mr. Carter gave a small, almost sympathetic smile. Because simplicity is easy to challenge, structure isn't. That stayed with me. After the meeting, I didn't go back to the house. I didn't call anyone. Not my aunt. Not the extended family. There had been messages, apologies, explanations, some sincere, some not. But I didn't feel the need to sort through them. Not anymore. Because for the first time, I understood something I hadn't before. Closure doesn't always come from other people. Sometimes it comes from clarity. I kept the watch, not as a trophy, not as proof, but as a reminder of how easily narratives can be shaped and how important it is to question them. A week later, Aunt Rebecca called. I let it go to voicemail. Not out of anger, just boundaries. She left a message, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I should have listened, she said. I'm sorry. I believed her, but belief didn't mean access. That was the difference now. I still showed up to family events occasionally. Smaller ones, shorter visits, enough to acknowledge, but not enough to be pulled back into something I'd already stepped out of. And Ethan, I didn't see him again. Not in person. The last thing I heard was that he'd moved out of state, started over, or tried to. I didn't follow up, because his story wasn't mine to manage anymore. One evening, I found myself back in my apartment, the watch resting on my desk. I opened it again, looked at the engraving, the date, the initials, and for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A second marking, small, almost hidden, inside the inner casing. I tilted it toward the light. A single word, verify. I smiled. That was it. Not trust, not loyalty, not even family. Verify. That was the lesson he left me. And this time, I understood it. Sometimes the hardest part about being betrayed by family isn't the loss, it's the confusion. The way doubt creeps in, quietly making you question your own memory, your own instincts, your own worth. And if you've ever been in that position, you know how isolating it can feel when the people who are supposed to know you best are the ones who misunderstand you first. What I learned is this: setting boundaries isn't the same as seeking revenge. It's not about proving someone wrong. It's about protecting what's rightfully yours, including your peace of mind. And forgiveness, if it comes, doesn't mean giving people the same access they had before. It just means you're no longer carrying what they did. If you've ever had to step back from family to protect yourself, I'd genuinely like to hear your story. And if this kind of story resonates with you, you can stay connected. There's more to come. This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection.